My name is Goldman, and I'm an attorney with Goldman and Associates. And today I'd like to talk to you one offshoot of that's common in divorces, and that has to do with what we used to call alimony, now popularly called spousal support. The concept of alimony basically is that in the context of the marital union, perhaps one person had a much bigger income than the other, and now that the union is falling apart and the parties are headed toward divorce, how do we maintain our bills? How do we maintain our expenditures and our lifestyle? So the creation that the court put together was alimony. The notion that one person, the payor, will pay some money to the other person just to help them either rehabilitate so that they can get back into the swing of things, get back into the swing of paying bills that they never had to pay, at least not for the last few years of the marriage. Or it could be the concept that somebody's disabled and they're not, they don't have the ability to be gainfully employed, so they're being helped out by their ex-spouse. Or it could simply be the concept that it's a long-term marriage with a big disparity of income, and therefore one person has to help the other person out, because the court wants to make sure that in that scenario, both parties basically have the same amount of money to live on. The idea is that if both parties put, let's say, 30 years into a marriage, they should end up with the same benefits from the same level of investment that they put in. In the matter of a 30-year marriage, it may very well be most of the person's adult life. So for that kind of thing, the court is probably going to be favorably disposed toward awarding some alimony. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into alimony. I'm going to give you three main ones. The main factor that we look in alimony, number one, is how long is the marriage? What that means is that, generally speaking, a long-term marriage, 20, 25, 30 years, is much more likely to have an alimony component when there's a divorce than a 1 or a 2-year marriage. It's not to say that alimony is impossible or guaranteed either way, but when the court looks at these things and you're looking at the spectrum of exposure, when you're an earner in a long-term marriage, your exposure is much greater to pay alimony, whereas a short-term marriage considerably less. The second factor we want to look into is the disparity of income. In other words, if there's a marriage between two parties who are working and one makes considerably more than the other, or one is working and one makes zero, that makes you closer to a situation where you got an alimony case. At least it's going to be something that's going to be in play in your divorce. And of course, the third factor is a very practical one. You got to have disposable income to pay the alimony. So in other words, you might have a long-term marriage. You might have a situation where one person earns dramatically more than the other, but the parties, they live such a high lifestyle that they're check to check. They don't have any extra, there is no extra money to pay alimony. By the time the payor is done just paying the bills that was accumulated in the marriage, there's nothing left. In that case, it's much less likely to be an alimony situation, whereas if it's a marriage where there's extra money left at the end of the month for miscellaneous expenditures, it's much more likely that that's an alimony case. So obviously it's very case specific. If you're in a situation where you're trying to figure out, can you get alimony, or if you're trying to figure out what is my exposure to paying alimony, obviously give us a call and we'll be happy to answer your questions and of course help you out in any way we can.